When it comes to this tired, repeated narrative of a lone wolf gunman killing people in events that directly shape government policy already being discussed, and we see it happen again and again and again and again and again and again and again since John Wilkes Booth, for Christ's sake, I don't think it's really up to us in the alternative circles to have to prove that the authorities and mainstream media are lying about them anymore. I think at this point it's up to them to prove their claims to us, and so far in this Las Vegas shooting I've seen nothing to convince me that the official narrative is remotely true, other than the fact that a crowd was fired on and many people were hit and a bunch died. That is true. In fact, even people who refuse to look at the evidence for the claims of past false flag operations are starting to wake up in the aftermath of this Vegas event, and that's because they're finally catching on. This was a very sloppy operation, very textbook. What people need to realize, and they can easily do so by just looking around with their eyes open, is America is effectively turning into a police state, and that this is by design. And if you think this level of conspiracy couldn't happen, then you're naive to history. This has happened throughout history in many empires. I point to Russia and Germany not too long ago for two really easy examples. In America, predominantly, as of late, every one of these lone wolf attacks or riots that have dominated headlines relentlessly for the last few years have happened just as legislation relating to them is being discussed. And they prompt bills being passed which tighten the security on American citizens, slowly lessen their freedoms, and put more power into the hands of intelligence, surveillance, police, military, and defense agencies. We have George Soros funding groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter and so on, and this is leading to staged riots and serious injuries, even deaths. And then we have Trump giving the police forces billions of dollars worth of tanks, armor, machine guns, grenades, and any other military equipment you can name. So it's both sides, the right and the left, and they're working together towards a common agenda. All the stuff they argue about, the minor issues that you see on TV, is all rhetorical bullshit. They serve the same masters on both sides. And I'll leave you to research this stuff further and in more detail if you'd like. But for now, we're going to go over this latest staged slaughter in Las Vegas and the points which should perk up the eyebrows of anyone that's paying attention to what's going on. We'll start with the fact that the lone wolf claims CNN and its counterparts are repeating all day, every day since the bullets were flying is patently false. We'll look at some strange connections between the alleged gunman, Stephen C. Paddock, and the defense, intelligence, and security sectors, starting with this. This is a post that was uploaded on the website 4chan on September 10th, which was 3 weeks prior to the event that unfolded in Vegas. For those unfamiliar with 4chan, it's a message board that allows its users to post anonymously and without a trace. And because of this, it's been known to be used by liars and whistleblowers alike. But this post, left by a guy just calling himself John, is extremely important. He wrote, "Look, I feel bad for some of you on this website, so I'll let you in on a little secret. If you live in Las Vegas or Henderson, stay inside tomorrow. Don't go anywhere where there are large groups of people. Also, if you see 3 black vans parked next to each other, immediately leave the area. You're welcome. Signed, John." And then people started saying stuff like, "I live in Vegas, what are you saying? Should I leave my home? Armed to the teeth." A bunch of people made fun of John's post, like this one who put a picture of John Podesta and wrote, "John?" Which I thought was pretty funny. But anyways, John responded a little later and answered a few questions that were posed for him to elaborate. And he said, "It's called the High Incident Project. They want to make the American public think that places with extremely high security aren't safe. They are trying to create more regulations. You will see laws proposed within the next few years to put up more metal detectors and other security devices. Media and politicians will be saying places with lots of police need even more police. I can't guarantee anything will happen tomorrow, but Las Vegas is on their minds." Signed, John. And then people really started hounding this guy, so he left one final comment saying, "If their plan is successful, the state of Nevada will pass a law in the future making all casinos have mandatory metal detectors and backscatter machines. Soon after, a federal law will be passed to put these machines in universities, high schools, federal buildings, you name it. OSI Systems and Chertoff are the main producers of these machines. Sometime around 2020, Chertoff and OSI will merge into a single company. After they merge, the owners will sell off their stock and make billions in profit. Mr. Chertoff has been in contact with Sheldon Adelson. Mr. Adelson will become a huge sponsor of these machines, and he will be the first to put them in his casinos when the law passes. This is my last message for now. Don't expect me to return anytime soon. Signed, once again, John. And that was his last message. And in it, he names a few names, those being Michael Chertoff, who was George W. Bush's Secretary of Homeland Security, the second one in history, and who now heads up the Chertoff Group, which is a risk management and security consulting company that works with the government. And John also named Sheldon Adelson, who basically owns Las Vegas itself, and who met with President Trump directly after the shootings for a meeting that was planned beforehand. It's worth mentioning that both of these men, Adelson and Chertoff, are both dual Israeli citizens and known Zionists. And I'll leave it at that for now and let you do your own research to realize the implications of that. Either way, it's simply astonishing that this John posted this on September 10th, telling all that read it that a staged event was headed to Las Vegas that would threaten the lives of anywhere nearby, and then it happened. Call it a coincidence if you want, but I think this, while circumstantial, is very telling. And the intelligence and security connections only begin there. When we look at the patsy, or the shooter, Stephen Paddock, we find more connections to these sectors. First off, Paddock worked his career before a very early retirement in his 30s at the company which preceded Lockheed Martin, which is the largest defense contracting company on planet Earth. You know, enemy number one. So right away we see this guy as a professional from the exact sector who could pull this event off, the exact sector that would benefit from this event happening, and the exact sector this John guy predicted was gonna conduct a violent event to boost the business of that industry 3 weeks prior to the shooting. And it doesn't end there either. A search on FlightAware.com shows Stephen C. Paddock of Henderson, Nevada, so our reported shooter for sure, used to own a fixed-wing, single-engine jet a decade ago, which is now owned by Volant LLC. And a quick search shows who Volant is, another security and defense company serving the Department of Defense and intelligence community. In fact, one of their main services is providing attack prevention against what just happened in Vegas. And this is where his plane ended up. Also curious was this picture that was circulating within a few hours of the attacks. It was posted by a worker for the Vegas Hotel and Casino Union, and it shows, as is almost always the case with these events, that an active shooter drill was held just over a day before the shooting, which mimicked exactly what took place after it was finished. Another strange occurrence I'll mention that happened over the weekend was when Paddock's Reno house was broken into. USA Today says the burglars broke in through the front door, but they don't know how many people were involved, and they say nothing was taken or even damaged. Now the Reno police and FBI are together, quote, working to make sure no further incidents occur, end quote. So I don't want to speculate on what significance this bears on the case as a whole, if any, but it's worth noting as it's just another strange piece to this overall puzzle of corruption. And also this weekend it was stated by the Vegas police that Paddock shot a security guard in the hallway of the Mandalay Bay Hotel 6 minutes before he opened fire on the crowd out the window, which completely changes their story from earlier when they said the guard was reacting to the shooting. And to make matters even more convoluted, MGM Resorts then denied the police version of the story and said they have it all wrong when it comes to the timeline. So these people can't seem to keep their stories straight at all. As I said, this is the sloppiest cover-up in history. It was busted right out of the gate, and it keeps getting more tattered every single string that's pulled. And yes, we can be sure it's a cover-up. Which brings us to what I think is the smoking gun here, or should I say one of the many smoking guns. Maybe I'll call this the nail in the coffin. And that's what we find when we follow the money. This method 99 times out of 100 will lead to the guilty parties, and this is one of those cases for sure. So first we'll deal with the man who seems to be behind most of the planned turmoil festering within America, the infamous George Soros, who bought a put option on 1.35 million MGM shares, totaling over $42 million, several weeks before the massacre happened. So to explain in the most basic sense, because I'm no investor and this stuff confuses me, but a put option is an option to sell assets at an agreed price on or before a particular date. That's the actual definition. So in the world of investments, if you believe a stock's price is going to drop, you can buy a put option for an agreed price for the stock when selling it. So like if you have shares worth $100 each and you think they're going to drop in value, you can make a deal to sell them to your buyer for $80 each in 2 months from then. And if the price does in fact drop during that time to, let's say, $50 a share, you'll have made $30 a share above the market price. So when dealing with millions of shares at a time, betting against a stock in this way can make someone a massive profit, just as John Paulson did in 2007 when the market was crashing on everybody else. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. In short, betting against a stock is a way to make big profits, but you basically have to be a fortune teller to do it with any success, unless of course you have inside information, which is illegal. Well, this is exactly what George Soros seems to have done 8 weeks before the MGM shooting. The Securities and Exchange Commission has released his filings for August 2017, and they show he bet big against over 1 million shares in a company he didn't even own on his filings from 4 months prior, and that's the MGM shares. So you gotta ask yourself, how did George Soros, the man behind so much political, social, and economical corruption in the world, and a man so connected he can influence entire countries with a mere phone call, how did he know the MGM stock was going to fall? The common sense answer can only be because he knew the event was going to take place before it did. And if you're confused about this, take into consideration that MGM had just approved a $1 billion share repurchase program, which means the company itself goes around and buys up its own stocks, and in turn, because there's less shares available to the public, they go up in price. So why would Soros bet they were going to go down? What could he have possibly known that no one else did? Well, it turns out Soros wasn't the only one who knew, and this is where it gets even crazier. According to another SEC filing, we see that MGM's CEO himself, James Murren, dropped 80% of his personal shares in MGM. We're talking millions upon millions of dollars here. This guy was involved in the repurchasing program himself, and he turns around right after and dumps almost all of his stock in the company. Any fool should know that this move would be seen as him working against his company by creating a panic when a CEO rids himself of the stocks for his own company. The only explanation would be that he thought the stock was going to take a nosedive. As the disobedient media aptly posits, quote, "It needs to be asked why any profit-oriented CEO of any company would sell 80% of his personal stake in his own corporation, especially after he thought it was in the business's best interest to initiate a massive share repurchase program, which one would theoretically assume to reduce the number of shares in the company and increase the price of each share. Ceteris paribus." Why would the individual with the most information about the company sell 80% of his shares immediately after the commencement of a program that most would consider positive for the stock? Shouldn't he want to hold on to his shares? Is there something he knew that others didn't that led to so much movement in such a little time? What a week! End quote. So there you have it. And it doesn't take much imagination to figure out what Murren's scheme is here. It's the same as the Rothschilds after the Battle of Waterloo. He sells the shares as they're high. The shooting that was planned happens, and then the stocks drop, and then he buys them back for pennies on the dollar. And abracadabra, you just made millions in profits. For nothing. Well, there's a term for that. It's called insider trading, and it's illegal. But not as illegal as mass murder. And based on Soros and Murray's market activity, we can see, if nothing else, a full investigation of them both is completely warranted, and even more should be demanded by the American people. These moves are the smoking guns. These men profited off the murder and injuries of innocent people. And this was no accident. Soros' put option and Murray's selling off of nearly all the shares he had in the very company he runs are both only possible if they knew the stock would drop for some otherwise unforeseen reason. And then bang, the biggest mass shooting in American history happens at the MGM. What are the chances?